So, my son recently started elementary school, and like any good father, I'm trying to figure out how to integrate uh, an interesting sort of anime-esque or manga-esque aspect to him going through elementary school. And so I sort of referenced um, the sort of power levels and radar charts that you see in things like Naruto, right? All these guys, they got their my chroma key is destroying all these charts, but you see they all have levels based on their chakra control, their taijutsu, and so on, right? Or speed and whatnot, or something like the Rikushozu, or is it Rokushozu? I guess from Hunter x Hunter, right? Something like that. You can really dig down and figure out how much your kid is excelling in certain subjects and how much they aren't in others. And I don't want to just use like the any kind of grading system or solely use a grading system from the school itself. I want something, we can get ahead, get stronger, get better at certain categories, find out what we still need to improve on ahead of time before it's like you get into one of those school situations where it's too late, right? So the categories that we have here, um, these are based on what the uh, what do you call it? The next the education committee anyway for the country has, and the subjects that you take in school, um, you have Japanese language, you have social studies, arithmetic, and something funny here, but a lot of people are really anal about if you say arithmetic or mathematics. Like in when I'm speaking English, these are like they're basically interchange. Well, mathematics, I guess, includes arithmetic, right? But here in Japan, if you say mathematics when you're talking about arithmetic, some people will be like, no, that's arithmetic. That's not mathematics, and the other way around. So it's really weird. Anyway, yeah, so arithmetic, science, life studies, and I'll explain this in a little bit. Music, art, I guess, is just to sum it up. So just like art and crafts, um, family and housing stuff, and physical education, and then foreign language studies. And then there's also special studies, moral studies, foreign language um, participation, I guess. I don't know. And then sort of like all around studies and stuff. And I bunched a lot of these into single categories so that we can put them together more easily. So first, you'll notice, or maybe you won't notice anyway, that on the list up here, I don't have life studies, but instead I have science and social studies there. Well, not instead, but because life studies, you see, you only have it in grade 1 and 2. Um, Elementary school is 6 grades, and then from grade 3 to 5, or sorry, 3 to 6, you have um, you have science and social studies that suddenly show up and just continue. So the basic idea is that life studies includes the fundamentals of these two subjects, and then they branch out into different subjects. And then when you get into like middle school or high school or whatever, some of these also branch out further. Like you'll have science, it can branch out into physics, geology, chemistry, and biology, I think. And maybe there's one more, I don't remember offhand. And social studies would branch off into either civics or geography and what is it? Geography and something. Sorry, it's not coming to mind. Anyway, let's just say geography and history. There we go. Geography and history, or civics, is the two branches of social studies that come up after elementary. I think in high school, and a lot of them, once you get to high school, there's like electives and stuff. Um, so anyway, the special studies here, just like maybe field trips or random school studies that don't really have anything to do with any of the other subjects directly. And I also included moral studies in was special because moral studies is kind of well, they don't spend a lot of time on it, and they just sort of sit around and talk about potential uh, situations, which I think is good to do, but it's really hard to categorize unless you were going to put it within like social studies or civics or something, which it might apply to. For me, I'm just putting it in the special category for now. So that category I have to have at the very bottom, uh, right there. So, and then foreign activity studies, which starts in grade 3 and 4, turns into foreign language studies in grade 5 and 6. And basically, for most elementary schools, this is just going to be like English studies um, for kids. So most elementary schools, this is how the government says you want foreign language studies starting roughly in grade 3 and 4, and then getting more serious in 5 and 6, and then they actually do more stuff in going on into middle school and high school. So that is the basics of what's going on here. So you'll see you have the most of the time the kids spend, especially in the early years, are on Japanese, and then next to that is mathematics, and in the final years of elementary school, mathematics and Japanese sort of the time spent in Japanese keeps going down after grade 2, and the time for sorry, arithmetic, not mathematics. Someone's gonna get mad at me. Stays pretty much the same after grade 2, so they sort of even out around grade 5. And these are probably the biggest ones in elementary school that kids spend the most time on. And then you have physical education, art, music, and so on. So for this list that I had here, how exactly are we going to determine if a kid is good in one subject or another without relying solely on the teacher's grading or ranking or whatever they give? And this how what they give really depend on what the school itself is. So some schools will just give you a triangle or a circle or a double circle, and others will give you a more distinctive grade of some kind. But and this I think it can be a very good reference. But there's a lot of systems set up already for many of these, and I probably should have had Koku instead of Khan at the top there. Anyway, a lot of systems already set up. So for language, the biggest thing, there's a test set up in Japan known as the kanji kente. And this is basically where kids go and they take a test that determines how much kanji ability. So this is the most difficult writing system that we do in Japan. And there are 12 levels of this, as you can see, from pink to green. Green is at the bottom of this particular image, and the level 1, or grade 1 rather, would be the most difficult. The grade pre-1 is it's called, I guess, you sub-1, pre-1. There's a lot of these sub levels in these kinds of tests. Would be the second hardest, and then the grade 2 there would be the third most difficult. And they sort of have like, for all of these different grades, they give you sort of an indication of what level of knowledge this is in regards to or in relation to school. So here we have the grade 10, the one in pink at the top of the thing on the right here. I can't reach that high, I guess, but that one, it says it's what a kid would know once they finish the first grade of high school. And there's also like what percentage you need to pass each test. So for these kanji tests, for example, you would need, I think the 1098 require 80% or higher to pass. 76543 and pre 2 are all 70%, and then 2 pre 1 are all 80%. I've personally taken a few of these. The level 2, for example, this is high school graduate or university level Japanese, basically. For and even though I'm speaking English here, this is for locals. This isn't a test for like people whose first language isn't Japanese, for example. But they could still take them, of course. Anyway, so the level 2, I passed it first try, 80 something percent, maybe 90%, I don't remember. But these are all the kanji. It says 2,136 possible kanji here that you can take. And I have tried the next level up a couple times. This is basically for people who want to be like editors at big publishing houses or whatever, right? The amount of kanji increases. So everything you learn in your 12 years of school, you get like an extra you add an extra 50% on top of that, basically, for the next level. I took this a couple times. I could not get over 80%. I'll probably take it again at some point, but it's a hard test. Anyway, for now, we're talking mostly about what kids would go do in school. And here I have from level 10 to level 5. Level 5 would be the final grade of elementary school in year 6 of elementary, and level 4 would be the first year of or actually they kind of at level 4 they kind of stop measuring it in specific years. So level 4 is just what you would know while you're in middle school. Level 3 would be like someone who paid really good attention and completed middle school, what you'd be able to do. So 4 and 3, right? And for adults anyway, just for information, I'd say most adults who want to test their level of kanji would probably start from level 3. Again, this is for locals, people whose first language is Japanese. So they would probably start level 3, and most people will never get pre 1 or above. I would say the average high school graduate would have achieved maybe a pre 2 level. Very dedicated students will get the level 2, but in general, pre 2 would be like what most students could realistically achieve if they were kind of dedicated to their studies or whatever. So, okay, back to the point. So for this chart that I had at the beginning, how would I rate an elementary student as a level 10 or max points on this grid? If I wanted to max it out, if I want my son to say, okay, he's completed everything that he needs to do in elementary and then some. So in this case, I would actually use the level 4, which is the first level for middle school students. So if he's completed the level 5, even though that is what you'd rate someone for completing everything in elementary school in this certain category, I would still use the level 4 because max points, I'd want you to go at least one level beyond in this case. So again, if this was actually if I was going to have a chart for middle school, and I've already kind of made some separately, I would say he'd want the level pre 2 or above for max points for middle school, you know. And then for high school, I would want him to get the pre 1, even though that is far beyond what most high school students will ever achieve. So again, for this, I've already had him take the level 10. We're working on the level 9 with him right now. My son, he just started elementary recently, so he's been in it for like less than 2 months. And so he's currently at like a score of I have 2 on this chart anyway. So he wants to get all the way up to the level 4 here. So that's 7 tests that I want him to pass if he wants max marks here. And hopefully this will become a little bit more, he'll be able to influence himself into wanting to achieve these. For now, I'm just trying to make it fun for him. All right, so to level 4, 7 different levels, and how far he's gotten those levels. And he's going towards the grade 9 here. All right, next would be the English tests. For English, there's several different tests that people use to measure their English ability in Japan. But one of the easiest ones to see your progress on is called the Aiken. It's a pretty famous one, and they've recently added several levels to the test. So I think these are technically different organizations or different parts of an organization that run the test, but there is the Aiken Junior, and then there's the regular Aiken. And so for the Junior, you have levels bronze, silver, and gold. And then for the Aiken, starting next year, actually, or starting in, it is currently May, so starting in, I think, February, they're adding the level 7 and 6 for younger kids to do. And then they consider the level 5, 4, 3 all middle school level English. So even though I consider myself pretty good at English, I never started teaching my son English until very recently. And I had him do the bronze and silver tests that he has passed. So gave him a little bit of a boost on these English scores here. I would want him to get at least to the level 5 before completing elementary school. But there's actually a lot of kids who, in early elementary school really focus on English and get a much higher level. And actually, I remember in the Jujutsu Kaisen movie, the Yuta was asked, like, "Oh, what is your rank, your sorcerer rank?" I think it was, and he says, or I guess they didn't specify. He says, "What you mean, Aiken?" And so these sort of these grades here, they're used in a lot of things in society in Japan, and probably go into that in a future video. But I'm just trying to figure out the fun system for kids, especially my kid right now. So anyway, you got the 3 levels at the bottom. Then we'll have the 7, 6, and 5. So at least 6 levels. Maybe I'll expect a level 4 or 3 in my son's case. I don't know. We'll see how he does. But yeah, how high should we expect kids to learn while they're in elementary school? So next we have the arithmetic here, and this one I've actually got it listed up what each level means. So there's 2 levels at the very bottom. which are the Silver Star and Gold Star, which are aimed towards young children uh, before they begin elementary at all. So they're doing like really easy uh, tasks like what shape is this, that sort of thing. I actually had these were, I think, the first tests that I had my son take while he was still in kindergarten. And kindergarten for most kids here is 3 years, but there's some variety there. Anyway, I had him take these tests in kindergarten, and then I actually had him take the grade 11 test in mathematics before he went into the first grade of elementary school. So saying grade for both of these is kind of weird. So maybe I'll say 11th level 11. And again, for most of these tests, the lower the number, the better the level. So this case, level 11 would be the completion of the first year of elementary school, which is which would be having a pretty good understanding of all the arithmetic that they'd learned there. And I did have him take the level 10 as well, which would include all of the second grade elementary school mathematics, or sorry, arithmetic, which would be like the times tables and adding two big numbers together or subtracting two big numbers, where you write them up and down. You call hisang. But he missed that one by a couple points already, so we're gonna challenge it again with him in I think a couple months, the next time they do this. So most of these tests happen somewhere between 3 or 4 times a year. And let's just take a look at what it says over here because they, for whatever reason, they have English on these as well. So it says numbers and shapes for playing and in daily life is for the gold star and silver star ones. And then the 11th Q, so Q is level basically, to the 9th is basic arithmetic skills used in daily life. And here, so for my ranking system that I was talking about earlier, I'd want him to get at least the level 5 first year of middle school. And the level 5 would be basic mathematical skill for developing intellectual members of society. And it's mathematics here because once you enter middle school, it becomes mathematics. So right below that is arithmetic skill used in daily life would be the up to level 6, basically. And then once you get up to the pre-1, in this case, is somebody who has completed and studied pretty well for everything up to the end of high school. So mathematics skills needed to creatively solve problems within an information society. And then the university level, level 1, mathematical skills needed to independently and collaboratively further development of the information society, environmental preservation, and economic activities of the world. So, I mean, that sounds like you're doing a lot once you get up there. I don't know how deep that goes. I haven't taken the top level mathematics yet. So yeah, this one I would say the first two kindergarten levels, and then the next 6 levels, so 8, and then the first level of middle school, so 9 levels to figure out the test. My son's completed 3 of those, so arithmetic is going all right. And let me just jump back to the English test for a moment, because this one, the setup for this one is kind of interesting compared to others. So a lot of tests have pre-2 and pre-1 built into the system. Some don't, some a lot do. So in this case, the they also, I guess, a lot of high school kids had trouble getting from pre-2 to level 2, and so they recently, I think just a year ago or so, added the level pre-2 plus. Yeah, pre-2 plus. Very strange naming there, to help people get from pre-2 to 2. So this is just something weird. And they recently added the 7 and 6, which I actually think probably the contents are going to overlap a little bit with the Silver Star and Gold Star of the lower grades, of the junior grades. But in the junior grades is basically listening problems, listening, and very little reading. Whereas I think 6 and 7 are going to include some kind of reading and writing, or at least reading. I'm not sure they'll include writing, but there's going to be reading on them, and there's not a lot of reading in silver. My son recently passed silver. If you're able to read, it's useful, but you don't have to read to be able to pass silver. I'm not 100% sure about gold yet, though. And just in the list that they have here, they have bronze would be first, second year elementary, silver would be third, fourth year elementary, and gold would be fifth and sixth year elementary. And then they added in the 7 and 6 that start next year, so we don't have a lot of details on them, which are also in elementary. So I assume that's like third, fourth year for 7, and fifth, sixth year for the level 6. So it's kind of confusing just saying all these numbers like this, but we can kind of determine the amount of points here. Although I, I, I don't know, maybe I do think that we could get a lot more in depth with learning English in the education system, but I don't know how necessary is it. Really depends on the individual. So, all right, so mathematics, or rather arithmetic, as we talked about. And then we go down to the next one. Now, science. So the first three that we just did, the Japanese, English, and arithmetic, these ones, the tests that I brought up are pretty much the gold standard. So for English, there's also like the TOEIC test or whatever that people take. And I guess there'd also be TOEFL. I actually took TOEFL before, which is like one that you have to take to get into universities or whatever abroad. If you want to go to a like Cambridge or Oxford or something like that. And why I had to take it, I don't know, but I did. And anyway, there's other tests, but they are, I would say, not as efficient at judging someone's progress in that, which is why I decided ACAN would be the better option. Okay, next, we don't have as famous of a test. So the previous three, especially the Kanji Kente and the Eigo Kente, these ones are known all over Japan. You tell pretty much anybody what level you are in these, and they will have some idea what that means at least. Like, I don't think most people understand how hard the pre-1 and 1 are in the Japanese one here. Like locals, you could tell someone, like with my face, I tell someone, oh, I took the pre-1 and I wasn't able to do it, and they think, oh, that's because you look the way you do or something like that. I get a lot of weird comments, but anyway, that they'll have some idea, basic understanding of if you say what level you are with these tests. That's how famous they are in the country. And the mathematics one, similar. I don't think it's quite as popular or quite as well known as the previous two. But then once we get into science, the there's a lot of people who don't even know about the existence of this particular test, but it still is, I would say, probably the major standard for determining your level of science. But the test isn't set up quite as straightforward as with the other tests. So um, there is technically, I think level 11 is the lowest, and then I don't even have it on here for some reason on this list of tests, which you can get to level 11 through the score 30, which is at the bottom here on the other side. And the score 30, so level 11, 10, 9, and there's actually also a pre-8 in this test. They assign you a score or a grade based on your score in the test. So max points, you would be pre-8. You get like, I don't know, 30% of the questions right. You'd be level 11. You get like half the questions right. Maybe that's a level 10, and you get 70% or something like that. You get level 9. Is my understanding of this. We haven't actually taken this one yet, but I did get the related books for this so that we could look at the test and study it. And this is actually it's actually kind of crazy how difficult some of the stuff is. I'll show off the book at some point and show you what they expect like grade 3 elementary students to know in order to be able to pass these tests. Some pretty crazy stuff. Anyway, in this case, we have a list here of the different levels of tests. And once you get to the level 2, it actually separates into physics, chemistry, biology, and geology that they have up here. And the level 5 would be considered middle school. So again, for the chart that we had at the beginning, I want my son to be able to achieve level 5 in this before graduating elementary school for a max elementary kid chart. And then, we'd move into the next chart. And I'm just kind of like, I'm still really working on the chart, as you'll see in the next categories, which are even more just all over the place. So some of them I'm not going to go into too deep at this point. And I haven't had him take the science test yet, so I can't really speak as to the details of it yet. I've never taken these ones myself either. All right, next category is social studies. Social studies, there's actually a lot of different possible tests, and I'm still trying to figure out what ones we should use to, really measure his ability in these categories. Like there's map tests, like local map tests, sign tests. There's tests that include like civics and history and all sorts of different things. And there's tests that sort of encompass everything together. But I'm still kind of looking into those and seeing what ones would be best to integrate into his studies and what ones would be best to use to gauge his current level. But one test that we've already taken 2 of are the international knowledge flag tests. We're actually going to take the next 2 levels of these very shortly, so I won't go into too much detail here, but this is basically knowing the flags of the world in great detail. So you see here, you'll have these red flags on the other side of where I'm pointing here, or sorry, the stoplight flags. You know, you'll have they're asking what one is Guinea and what one is Senegal, for example. So you should know that number one is Guinea, number two is Cameroon, number three is Senegal, number four is Mali, and that sort of thing. The next question is actually in is it so they want to know how long um, did the flag of America remain the same after Alaska joined in 1959? And then they give you multiple choice here: 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. So anyway, those kinds of questions about flags, what each country's flag is, and sort of the history around flags. And the reason that we're actually doing this test as opposed to, let's say, map tests or other tests that exist is the ones that I looked at initially. A lot of them are aimed specifically at like very high level people, like people who want to specialize in this, like people who are want to be map makers. That's what they do, right? Or weather reporters or that sort of thing. So there's not there weren't a lot of tests in those areas that even the lowest level would be achievable for most elementary school students or even most middle school students, I'd say. And I wanted to pick something that we could do. And again, I'm not going to base social studies solely on this test that we are doing. But when I was asking my son all these sorts of questions, showing him things that we could do, he found it fun identifying flags. So we decided, okay, let's do the flags for now, and I'll go into this a lot more detail in maybe the next video. We'll see what flags that we have and everything. So social studies, this is just one of the elements that I'm planning on using. Next, special. So this is basically anything that doesn't really fit into any of the other categories. And here I just have the ninja test that they have for the Koga ninja. And a lot of people think it's Koga do ninja, but the city council, I guess, decided that no, it's Koka. So take that as you will. Anyway, they have 3 tests here, and these ones aren't specifically for kids, actually, surprisingly enough, even though they look like they would be. You know, the second test here, the second grade here would be the Chunin Shiken, which is I think a lot of people have heard of something similar. Anyway, the idea behind this special category that I have, so let's go back up to the top, the one at the bottom here, the special category, is that anything that doesn't really fit very well into these other categories, like some kind of hobby or whatever, could fit in this special one. So I don't really have a good benchmark for it quite yet, which is why I'm just putting in a possible example. And these tests, apparently these are pretty much aimed towards adults, and it's very rare to have elementary school students even pass the lowest level of these. So, you know, if this particular test we were going to use, it would just be the lowest level would be enough. But I'm thinking of including various other tests and elements as well. And as just like with the rest of these, I'm not 100% just going to base it off these tests alone either way. But this is just something that we're looking into. So the special category is going to need a lot more work. Okay, next we have physical education. And for physical education, there's actually it's such a huge category. There's so many different tests that have their own ranking systems and everything, like almost every Olympic sport and sports that aren't Olympic sports, you know, kendo and whatever, and And then depending on the organization you go through, there'd be various other ones as well. And I've had to actually my son do some like 5K runs or something using virtual marathon organizations, and or using a rowing machine. He's 6 years old right now, so the rowing machine's still kind of, it's kind of tough to get a good row, and doing all sorts of like events and stuff that way. But one system that we actually have in Japan for measuring physical education is called the Shintairyoku Testo. So it is 8 different categories of sort of physical ability that they have that they test you on, and the categories do not change across the elementary school grades, but and they only change a little bit once you get to the middle school grades and so on. And they have like specific ranking systems here. You see on the top, this is for boys and then for girls. And the categories that they have are grip strength, sit ups, stretching, side jumps, 20-meter shuttle run, 50-meter run time, um, standing broad jump, and softball throw distance. And then they give you a rank from 1 to 10 based on uh, how good of a score you get in each of these. And and then they tally up the score at the end. And then based on your age at the time of it, they will give you a ranking from, I think, E to A being the better ranking. And there was actually one or two prefectures in Japan that have recently integrated the S rank, which is, kind of like the kind of thing that I'm doing right now, something that's unnecessary and impractical, but motivational and very manga-like, the way that they integrate that. So, unfortunately, the prefecture I'm in does not have an S rank. And just for information purposes, the S rank, I read that you need 8 or higher across all 8 categories to get an S rank. So, and the numbers included in all of these are specifically aimed at elementary schools kids. So if you're taking the middle school or high school ranks, I think they also have ones for like elderly people and so on. But if you're taking the middle high school ranks, they will have different numbers for what's expected to get like 10 points in each category. And then again, they have different scores for male and female. So for example, you'll see one of the biggest changes is for a softball throw, they expect max points here. A male should be able to throw it over 40 meters. So I'd say it's a pretty good throw for an elementary school kid to get 40 meters or beyond. I don't know. I don't think I've ever measured my own throw, but I've been measuring these with my son anyway. He cannot yet get anywhere close to 40 meters, but he's slowly improving. And for girls, that's only 25-meter throw. So uh, you see in elementary school, the girls, the only one that they actually have to get higher points on is the stretching category. Everything else is expecting a higher performance from the males. So then they tally up your score, as I mentioned, and then based on your age, so from age 6 to what are we, 12, 13, they will give you a ranking. So if you're age 6, I think you need 38 points to get an A rank on that. And even if someone gets the lowest possible score ever, which is 8, assuming that they actually participate 8, so worst score in every subject, that's an E rank. And then everything in between, like B would be something like, I don't know, 32 to 37 or something like that. I don't have the I should probably put those numbers here as well. But anyway, you get the ranks, and a lot of schools actually have certificates that they hand out to kids who achieve an A rank. So at the end of the year, at some point in the year, they will give you they will give you this certificate for all the kids who achieved A rank. So my son, he'll be 6 at the time that the school that he's currently at will be doing this particular event. So we train a little bit every month just to get him closer to the scores that he'll need to get an A rank. And if I give him unlimited tries, he can get an A rank. But I still need to, make sure that he can, uh, he's more consistent with, the furthest ball throws, the being able to run fast and being able to get his best grip strength in, and so on. Anyway, again, this is just one of the things that I'm considering using to measure his physical ability. And I've had him do runs, rows, and other sort of competitions in this area. So just like the special category before, where I think I'm going to add a lot of other things, and maybe probably not even just tests, other things that for hobbies and whatnot that he does that don't really fit into any other category here as well. I'm definitely not going to base it on this alone, but this is something that I think will influence how many points that I would give him here. And just sort of a commentary here. When I looked at the list of the things that they do in elementary school for this test, I think it's not bad. It's pretty good, the range of things they do. However, I personally would like them to add push-ups and pull-ups. Just commentary here, personal preface. I think these are two other very basic skills that children should learn to be able to do to some extent. And I don't know how many push-ups or how many pull-ups you can expect of elementary school kids. I don't have that kind of data offhand, but I think being able to do maybe just 10 pull-ups would be 10 points, 5 pull-ups 5 points, just straight up that. And then maybe the push-ups, you would have them at a 5 base 5 times, so 5 or less 1 point, 5 to 10 2 points, or sorry, 6 to 10 2 points, something like that, right? And then 50 pull-ups max points, or 50 above 50 or above, let's say 5 or above would be 2 points, something like that. It's something that would be neat to add here. All right, next. This one is kind of weird because let's go way back for a moment. So where's it? Kate. So you got this. I really should edit where I can point my finger so I can do a better job with this. But there's one subject that you see on the list there that begins in grade 5 and 6, and that's the only one it is. And this is the sort of house making one, which would include like all sorts of house stuff. And I one of the biggest things would be like cooking and cleaning and probably tax payment and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty big range of the things that would be included here in the house family life category one. Maybe they would also go into I should probably look this up, but my son just started and he's not going to be there for several years where he has to take these classes, so it's not quite that much of a priority. But when I looked into it, this actually splits off into, or I think in middle school, I should double check this, but in middle school, they have like house and information technology as a single subject, which is kind of weird, right? So it's like uh, using computers and cooking is like the same, and then I think it separates again once you get to high school as maybe electives like cooking and cleaning or programming or something like that. So because at some point they converge into one category and there isn't really a gold standard of tests for these. um, I included the sort of a major cooking test that I found, as well as some of the bigger programming tests that young kids can also do. So again, I'm gonna have to go through this in more detail, scrutinize it a bit more to figure out exactly how I want to use this to rank um, his progress and how far that he should be expected to do before graduating elementary if I want him to have super high points in these categories. But yeah, so housework, cooking, cleaning, taxes, and programming and computer use will make up this category. Next, we have music. So, um, kids have music. They start music when kids who go to kindergarten also usually have, I think, at least 1 year of music, and then you do music all throughout elementary and so on. And there's a couple major music groups or companies, I guess, that we have in Japan. One of them that I have here is from Yamaha, and this is called the Yamaha Grade. They have 13 different levels of sort of musical rank, your ability to recognize tunes, play music, and even teach music, and so on. And I personally have not been very musically inclined for my life, so this is another one that I'm really going to have to look into in a lot more detail and figure out how my son will get more involved, and if we should even choose this particular test, for example, because although it's set up very, very nicely, it is kind of weird how you can only get the max grades in the very end if you're doing piano or a piano-like instrument. I think other instruments like guitars and so on, the max level is level 3, which is weird. Also, I have no idea at what point you should or would expect an elementary student to get to. So yeah, this is one of those ones that I'm going to need to look into a lot more before deciding uh, what it is. But there are also sort of like music concours. Um, shoot, like the not tournaments, but I don't know, musical uh, events that they do at the school, let's just say, and showing off your musical ability as kids, or sort of it's kind of a concert for kids and that sort of thing. So, these things I think can all be taken into account when trying to calculate a proper grade and seeing what could be done. And then, so yeah, this is one of the many categories, especially the later categories that have been talked about, that they're going to need a lot more scrutiny. And if anybody has any really good ideas how to sort of rank these during the elementary school years or beyond, be sure to share them in the comments. All right, finally, we have um, art, basically art and craft, right? And this is another one where I could not find what I would consider a good standard of tests that children can also participate in to um, you know, sort of prove their level in a certain category in the arts and crafts sections. So there are tests here, but again, these tests are more, I think, aimed towards people who are going to like specialty schools or something, people who are going to graduate high school or have already graduated and are in college or university or whatever, or doing some trade. And yeah, those kids, what they're do are those they'd be adults, I guess, at that point. So so what we should do for kids, again, this one I'm kind of on the fence about. I think maybe if I look a little bit more, I could probably find a more appropriate uh, subject. No, not subject. A more appropriate series of tests or some way to gauge progress in the art area. Okay, so this one, again, arts and crafts. I don't have a good benchmark for it yet, but it's another one. If anybody has any really good ideas here, we should go through and that would be helpful. So go back, we've gone through all the categories, and well, I think that we can use tests to determine, how much ability the, or let's just say potential ability, uh, I guess it would be more than potential if they've proven on a test, but how much ability they have proven in a certain category. But at the same time, like let's look at let's look at Neji here, his card. One thing that I think we can sort of learn from this as well is at the bottom of these cards, whoosh, they also have, where are we going? I don't know if you can see that very well. They also have like mission ranks, like in Naruto. So yeah, I'm basing real life off of Naruto right now. So it's hopefully everybody's okay with that. Anyway, um, so yeah, they have missions from D rank being the lowest to S rank being the highest for the missions that they send these uh, ninjas out on once they've gained a certain level of skill. I think implementing this as part of a system as well uh, would be very useful, but I've really been going back and forth with how this would be done realistically. Like what kind of missions would be missions. As an adult, this could be like work. Let's say that I don't know, you're writing a book, right? If you just say publish a book, especially maybe traditionally published, there's a lot of gates you go through. You could consider that like a mission that's centered in uh, language. In the average case here, that'd be, I guess, in Japanese language for that. But if you publish the book in English, it could be for English language. If you uh, let's say you do some sort of translation service work or whatever, that could be a mission in centered in English and Japanese that is of a particular rank. Or let's say you work on a project, you work on a video game or something, and depending on your role on that game, of course, it could be um, it could be language, math, um, music, art, whatever, right? So the category, I guess, in that case might be slightly less important, but having missions based on the knowledge and skills that the kids have actually obtained would be an interesting thing to do. And I think if we're going to use Naruto as an example, which for whatever reason I am, um, they had like D rank missions like finding people's cats or something. And people, they have, if their cats go missing, they put up posters, missing cat. So actually looking for a cat, finding the cat, this would be like a D rank mission in based in social studies, perhaps. like civics, maybe. I don't know. Um, so yeah, this system obviously it still needs a lot of work. I'm still trying to figure out how to put this together most reasonably, but I really like the idea of having kids be able to visualize their ability in some kind of radar chart like this. Like how much do they know? And the reason that I decided to cap it at the end of elementary school rather than having like a full life and including let's say like the hardest kanji test in the entire country here is because it like every year these lines would go up so minimally. So I like to cap it at you know at a certain point, and then if I'm still using the system, which hopefully would be super improved by the time once he's a middle school student, maybe I'll cap it at the end of middle school or go straight to high school cap. um, or if he's showed enough progress in every area, then you could go straight to the full uh, adult one. And another reason is that some of these categories would slightly change as you get older. So in the sense of school, you might break social studies down into geography and history and civics, as I mentioned earlier. The arts and crafts could be broken down into, art specifically, or um, I think there's a few other electives once you get to high school. And then science, again, there's at least four of those: physics, geology, chemistry, and biology. And maybe arithmetic would just turn into math, I guess. So that one could probably just stay as it is. Uh, Depending on how you look at it, maybe the physics could even go into the math category, or math and science could converge as physics. You could set this up a lot of different ways. And the household one, that's separated it properly into household and like uh, the the information technology or computers or whatever. Um, you know, some you might want to merge, some you might want to split, and I think this will change depending on the stage you are in life. So the chart, if I was going to make one for middle school, high school, or just life in general for adults, I would slightly change this. And once you get to the adults, I think because the system becomes less structured when you're an adult and you don't have, you know, um, most of these categories would still exist in some sense, like physical education could be just your diet and health. The home one, you know, if you're a member of society, you probably live in some kind of home, have, to pay taxes, the civics and that sort of ones sort of still around, but not everybody is necessarily participating in arts and crafts, music, science, mathematics, English. I'd say most people in Japan anyway would be doing Japanese at some to some degree. Um, but then if your job or your major hobbies involve a particular category, then maybe you would split it off that category as well. Maybe you're studying multiple foreign languages, and it wouldn't just be English, it would be, English, German, Chinese, French, whatever, and so on, right? So, um, yeah, I would definitely like both advice on how people think that we should rank these better, for one, especially the later categories that don't really have a gold standard benchmark. Uh, and I would like people's sort of like ideas on what people think certain missions could be that even kids could get involved with. And I'd also like people to sort of, work with something like this and say, for you personally or for your kids, let's say if somebody's watching this and you live in a different country than me, like how would it look for you? What categories do you have in school? Um, for elementary or otherwise? What categories do you have in life? What are you focusing on? Sort of like a skill chart for what you're doing and how you would set it up, how you would figure out how good or bad your skills are, what you need to work on, what you don't, what missions you have accomplished or are aiming to accomplish. So how everybody would set these up, I'm this is something that I'd be interested in hearing about. So please leave comments regarding that. And I know I'm probably terrible at explaining a lot of things, but maybe the my explanation ability on a chart will go up as I continue practicing here. So I think in the near future, I'll upload some videos regarding explanations of tests that my son has either taken already or is going to be taking in the near future, and how his improvements going, school, and maybe just because I decided to do this channel in English, just sort of like a lot of things in Japanese life in general, like what's interesting and and whatnot. But I'm gonna try and keep this channel mostly focused on education and improvement. So I don't want to just go saying, "Oh, this is what we got in Japan." There's way too many like channels and stuff on that sort of stuff already. So you just people posting random stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna try to be relatively neutral in stances on things, whether I think something is good or bad in terms of like society or whatever. But I do want this to be an educational channel and a self-improvement channel. That's what we're going for. All right. Please like, subscribe, and comment all about all the things that you would improve or do or add or take away or change, or what kind of missions you'd have, and so on. So I'm planning on improving this chart as we go along. All right.